Rev up your engines! Today I'm going to talk about one of the most oversold jobs on cars. Brake jobs. How do you know if your car really needs a brake job? Well, I'm going to show you today. Now my customer here decided he wanted a brake job, so he bought all the parts, front brake pads and rear brake pads and rotors. So I'm going to change them out, but I'm going to show you how you can check to see if you really need it. Most of these cars have squealer pads. You can see this little metal prong here. And when that little metal prong touches the rotors, it'll squeal. That means instead of being thick and new like this, the pads are so thin that it's time to change them. So you hear that squealy grinding noise, first thing you want to do is pull off a wheel, see if they're just worn out. So you want to jack it up in the air and have a handy jack stand for safety and pull off the wheel. And off it comes. Now this particular one is 13 millimeter. We go to the back side and there's a little bolt here. We'll just stick it on and then whack it. Off it comes. Once you get that bolt off, the whole thing flips up. There we go. Now as you can see, these are really thick, the old ones. The new ones aren't much different, but he doesn't like the noise that these cheaper ones made, so he bought better pads. So I'm going to put these pads on. But if the customer would have had me inspect it, I would have said, you don't need front pads. If they said, well, they're making a noise, I say, well, you want to put better quality pads, the noise will go away, but they're thick enough. If they've gotten really thin so that they were thin as, say, a nickel or a dime, they'd need changing, but hey, they were almost as thick as these brand new ones, but what the heck, I'm going to put the new ones on because he bought them. It's an easy job, they just flip out. But before we put the new ones in, we're going to get some of this brake and caliper grease. Put a little bit on the ears. So when you put them in, they slide smoothly. It goes down in there, it goes up in there, and it goes right in. Then we do the other side too. And as you can see now, there's new ones on each side. And we squeeze the piston back in. As you can see now, it's squeezed in flush, and just to be on the safe side, we're going to put a little lube here where it wears and on the inside on the metal part of the piston. Then it just slides down. You get your little bolt and stick it in, make it finger tight, then get your 13 millimeter socket wrench and get it nice and tight. I put the wheel back on. Then as you can see, it spins freely. It's not dragging or anything. Now of course we're going to do the right front too because you do them in pairs, but we're going to do that last. Now we're going to check the rear. So jack up the rear, stick in a jack stand, off it comes. Now in this case, it's so bad you can see the rotor's all eaten up. The pads are down to the metal and the rotors are eaten up, so the customer was smart. He'd already bought the rotors and the brake pads. So we're going to replace both the pads and the rotor because it's all worn out and chewed up. It's rusted out anyways. I'm assuming this was a northern car at some point in time. Now in this case it's a little bigger. It's 15 millimeter. It goes on here and we unscrew it. In this case there's a little lock nut on it. So what we're going to do is get these vice grip pliers. I clamp those on the lock nut here. Then it'll keep it from spinning. It kept spinning. Now it's loose. We can just keep turning it. And I can get the rest with my fingers. We'll get the bare socket and stick it on there. Wow, that sucker's still on there. It's amazing. But finally, we got it off. Take that off. And slide the caliper out of the way. And as we can see here, this is all worn down practically to the metal. That's why it's all ground up. As I pull it off, you can see super thin. There's hardly anything left here, and it's all grooved and worn. We're going to have to replace this old rotor, but to get that off, we have to unbolt the caliper mounting brackets. There's two 18 millimeter bolts on the back side here. Now these can be absolute stinkers to go out, so I got a big 18 millimeter wrench and a hammer. We're going to whack them off. It's on tight, and we'll just hit it. It's moving, slowly but surely. That's coming loose. Now we're going to do the top one. It's up higher. Same thing. We'll whack it. And it's starting to move. You can then use the socket, which is faster. As you can see, it's going to be a lot faster. There's one. And the crows are watching today. Off it comes. There. Now we're going to get this off, which could be a stinker. You can see it's rusted on. But we get the old hammer, Man, it's on there. This is gonna be fun. So get out the old WD-40, spray it all around here, each one of these. Let it soak a little. Then we'll start whacking. I can see it moving a little, so we're gonna move this and do it bit by bit. Now we'll hit another part. We get the old clunker off. Before we go any further, let's see if the new one fits right. Well, it's not rusted. It fits perfect. Great. Now they coat these things with anti-rust, so we'll clean that off. Do the outside. We'll take it off. Do the inside. Wipe it all off and put it on. Then we'll get the two mounting bolts, stick them in the back here, and then wiggle this till they start going in. There's one. Stick that one in. Get them nice and tight. All I have to say for you northern mechanics, I feel sorry for you having to deal with this rusty crap all the time. Now, I grew up there, I remember it, but that was in the long past. I like the nice Texas rust-free cars myself. And now, of course, you squeeze this caliper back in, squeeze it in. Then same as the other ones. Get a little brake caliper grease, put it on the ears, slip them in. And do the back side, and put a little grease on the caliper assembly and slide it back down. The tiny bolt, stick it on the back side, and remember it'll slip, so you got to put this back on the inside. I'll just put the wheel back on. No, I'm not going to film the other side because it's exactly the same, left and right side. Let's hope the right rear one isn't as stuck as the left rear one, but it probably is. That's how it goes with northern cars. But now at least you know how to check your brakes, how to replace them if they need replacing, and don't go for unnecessary repairs. As I said on this vehicle, the front pads still had a lot of life in them, but he bought them and he wanted me to put them on. They're making a little noise, and these higher quality pads will be quieter too. But let's say you don't care that much about noise. You go in and you find they're thick, you can just live with it. It isn't going to hurt anything as long as the pads are thick and it stops and there's no leakage and no lights or anything are coming on. Because really, with the economy the way it is today, you gotta learn a little bit that you can do yourself, so you don't have to throw money away on things that maybe don't need doing, or you can easily do yourself. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Tommy 48210 says, I'm thinking about buying a 2018 Lexus NX 200T with 46,000 miles. It's 27 grand from the dealer. What's your view? Okay, well, one, never buy a car from a dealer. They charge way too much money. That's just how it goes. I personally am not a fan of the NX 200T. I do not like the 4-cylinder turbo Lexus vehicles. I work on them. They're underpowered. They rattle a lot, and you got a 4-cylinder turbocharged engine that isn't going to last. If I'm going to buy a Lexus, I'm going to buy a V6 engine. They got plenty of power. They get decent gas mileage, especially on a highway. I don't like their 4-cylinder turbos, and I would never pay $27,000 for a used one. On the street, you'd get them a lot cheaper. But if I were you, I'd look at some of the 6-cylinder ones. They're much nicer cars. They ride nicer. They're bigger. They're going to last a lot longer, not being turbocharged. I'd rethink it if I were you. Goldie's in the house. 10 says, got 2001 Honda Accord, and the check engine light's on. It's got P1259 for that variable valve system, and it doesn't run just right. Help. I've worked on a lot of those. The first thing you want to make sure is that your oil is clean, not dirty. Change it regularly, because there's a VTEC solenoid and it's got a little screen in it, and it will clog up with dirty oil. I see that all the time. But valve body switch, you want to replace that if the oil isn't dirty. And sometimes, even if you change the oil and it's dirty, it still won't work. Then you could at least take out the little valve. It's just got bolts holding it in, simple thing. And clean it all. You might see the screen is all clogged up with crud. You could clean the screen rather than replace it. They're not super expensive parts, but you know, a couple $100 is a couple $100. And if you can take it out and clean it, why not? Scotty, what's the junkiest Toyota you ever worked on or come across? Okay, the junkiest one I ever worked on was a Toyota Toyota Tercel I was working on here in Houston, but the customer had moved here 3 years previously from Cleveland, Ohio. The Tercels, we mechanics used to jokingly call them turd cells because they were turd mobiles. They weren't the greatest cars. They could run okay for a knockaround car, but they didn't ride that right. And the engines had bad valve seals, and the carbureted ones had horrible carburetors. But he brought it from Cleveland to Houston. And what happens is up there, the salt starts to rot stuff. Well, once the rust starts, when you come down to Houston, it's so humid here. If you have a car, like say my 94 Celica, has no rust on it, that's because it lived in Texas its whole life and it didn't start to rust. But if you take a car from Cleveland that started to rust and come down to Houston, it's so humid, the rust continues to go even faster because the humidity is all water vapor and the rust grows even faster. And one time the guy opened his driver's door and it actually fell off. So he pushed it back on, put a little duct tape on it, climbed in the other side. That was the junkiest Toyota I ever saw. It was still running though. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.